Kenny, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Kenny. And we appreciate the opportunity to share our TSMO efforts here in Missouri with the program delivery team. You all play a critical role in helping us to advance TSMO within the state of Missouri. And with that, the first thing that we should try to answer is, what is TSMO? And TSMO is an acronym, and it stands for Transportation Systems Management and Operations. It is the strategic approach to improving MoDOT's system to help our customers reach their destination safely and efficiently. MoDOT's TSMO plan was implemented in January of 2017 and focuses in on 4 specific areas: traffic incident management, work zone management, advancing technology and roadway operations, and connected and automated vehicles. Traffic incident management is a planned and coordinated program to detect incidents such as crashes or disabled vehicles with tools like CCTV cameras or crowdsourced information to help us respond to them safely and quickly, remove them from the roadway to allow traffic to return back to their normal operations. Work zone management is a planned and coordinated process to manage construction and maintenance projects that impact traffic. The goal is to ensure our workers and motorists remain safe, minimize delays to the traveling public, such as through queue management, and help to complete the work in a timely manner. Advancing technology in railway operations allows MoDOT to deploy various technology solutions such as dynamic message boards and traffic sensors to enhance the reliability of the transportation network. This includes actively managing the system through 3 of our transportation management centers located in Kansas City, St. Louis, and in Springfield. And then connected and automated vehicles is an emerging technology that allows vehicles to communicate with each other as well as with our transportation infrastructure. Things like traffic signals. These vehicles can also perform tasks such as steering and braking with little or no human intervention. And this technology has potential to positively impact the safety and operations of our roadway, as it could mitigate some of the behavioral issues such as distracted driving or impaired driving, which are focus areas of our strategic highway safety plan here in Missouri, known as Show Me Zero. Now, we've made great progress recently, but there are still more opportunities for us to pursue advancing TSMO in Missouri. Every MoDOT project should consider TSMO solutions and strategies. And we want to be proactive instead of reactive when it comes to deploying these solutions given their benefits. Ideally, opportunities to incorporate TSMO should occur during the planning stages of our projects and captured in the planning process documentation. And we need to continue to educate our workforce and partners through outreach efforts and various resources available and training. And ultimately, our mission is to provide safer travel on our roadways. But essentially all areas of MoDOT have some connection to TSMO. For the highway safety and traffic staff, we utilize real-time traffic data, our ITS devices, and work zone technologies in our day-to-day activities. Transportation planning staff can include TSMO in all of their planning efforts for transportation improvements, and this can help us deploy new infrastructure to support TSMO solutions, but it can also aid with the asset management perspective to help us maintain some of our existing devices that are out there. Design should consider TSMO as an essential element in their design process, especially as it relates to alternatives analysis. And you're talking about potentially looking at ways to improve capacity, right? And typically we would think of like adding more lanes, which might not be, well, it might be cost prohibitive given some of the construction costs and right-of-way costs associated with that. But some of the TSMO strategies that we have available to us can help us maximize the performance of our existing infrastructure. Construction and materials staff help to ensure our TSMO solutions are deployed to our specifications. Maintenance supports and maintains our TSMO deployments and can utilize newer technologies such as smart work zones to become more efficient and improve worker safety on our roadways. Information systems staff provide oversight for the communication systems between our various TSMO elements and technologies. And human resources incorporates TSMO skills and experience into position descriptions and can assist with training as well. So TSMO really does have a connection to all of these various different efforts or areas within MoDOT. And now I'd like to give an opportunity to some of our team leads to share some highlights of their specific efforts. I'll start off. I don't believe I saw Owen on today, but Owen Hassan leads our traffic incident management TSMO team. And some of the things that he's been working on recently is coordinating with our other emergency response partners, such as the Missouri State Highway Patrol and other law enforcement agencies, to have a commitment to making sure we get our roads open and traveling as soon and as safely as possible. Other things that they're actively working on has to deal with the emergence of electric vehicles. And when those vehicles are on our roadways, how do we respond to get those vehicles off the roadway and get them charged up into where they could get more electricity if they need it. And another thing that he's starting to investigate some more is the use of drones and how those can be used to monitor work zone conditions. Next, I'd like to give an opportunity to Dan Ash, who leads our work zone team.
Thank you, Ray. The biggest part of my job really was just keeping up with the folks we had on our team. The folks on the left were part of the team the first series, and then the folks on the right ended up joining us later. But they've worked on quite a few things. Everything we worked on was broken down into 6 areas. The first one being collaboration, the second one business process, third one systems and technology, fourth one performance measures, fifth one organization workforce, and then the last one being agency. With the first one, the collaboration, part of that was working with our law enforcement partners, and the Southwest District had a fantastic database that they'd used to deploy law enforcement on their projects, and along with St. Louis had some good ideas as well. So we kind of worked on that and supported that and kind of championed that statewide to facilitate law enforcement use in our work zones. Another thing that we did was just to bolster that collaboration between really the folks in the field and the law enforcement that are there on the road. We worked with Olson, the consultant, to create this handout where the two of them could meet in the field and kind of give some guidelines of what we're expecting, and a sheet there that you can see on the right to draw out situations where they might need to pull folks over in our work zone, in those situations when things are somewhat complicated out there. Another thing we did with collaboration was the contractors' performance ratings. Of course, those have been around for some time. We grade them on a number of different categories, but we noticed that there were some things related to safety that really weren't covered as well as we felt they should be. For instance, the number of times that they were cited for PPE violations, or, did a contractor experience worker injuries or fatalities, that were OSHA findings. And so those are some items that we added to the contractor performance rating working with industry to kind of shine a spotlight more over on safety and on the focus, of TSMO in our work zones. We had a number of strategies that we had already deployed and, used in our work zones for a number of years. The team kind of looked at those and worked on a lot of those JSPs and then added additional elements. You can see the elements here that were sort of the focus. And then in addition to making sure that, that those were shovel ready in the field and that, JSPs were in effect for those, some of which we continue to work on to this day. There was also strategies that were put out, just really a high level document that had a couple of pages really for each strategy. So if a strategy ended up being recommended for a project you were putting together, as a project manager, and there were questions, you had a sheet there that you could go to and print out and would be handy delivering the description, the benefits, the costs, and, some extra information for those that might be curious about what it is you're talking about. And then on the back of each one, I kind of gave an image, of exactly what we were talking about. So, whoever you were having to relay that to, whether it be senior management or a member of the public, they could be fully informed or more so informed, on what you were talking about and plan to do on the project. When you talk about these strategies, it was identified that another thing that would really be of benefit was to have a tool to kind of determine, maybe where some of these could be used and make sure that the strategies are being thought of in all the right places. In addition to that, we have our entire system out there, which is quite large, and kind of looking at the system and where we might want to focus more of our attention, was something that we looked at as well. And so we came up with an index just to kind of get us started, a priority index for where we might want to focus energies, on intelligent work zones and that type of thing. And then working with the planning group, color coded up some maps of our state and kind of highlighting those areas, that were of the highest priority and areas where we probably needed to, really be thinking about advanced technologies or intelligent work zone systems, in the event that we would have work zones in those areas. The advanced work zone strategy selection tool is something that I think a lot of folks have worked with for some time, and Alex will be going through some greater detail on some of these things, and so I'll just keep it pretty high level. But we went ahead and added an option there where you could get recommendations on each of the advanced work zone strategies, and then also contract time acceleration strategies. And so I think a lot of you are probably familiar with this work zone data tool that we've had for years. But then in addition to that, you can see the recommendations here that now can be populated basically for your area, any area once you've input that traffic data, and kind of make some recommendations about some things you might or might not use. And then also the budgetary considerations, because something we wanted to do was make sure these were thought of very early on, in the planning process, and so that we get our budget set correctly from the very beginning. And then we also made some recommendations there about contract time acceleration. So, that's an option if you would want to select that now as well. When we considered, holistically the issues we were having out there, we do continue to have some issues with our work zones from time to time. And so we kind of thought to ourselves, if we could kind of snuff out, the top 5 or 10 issues that we continually see out there on the road, that would be just a tremendous benefit. And so the team worked together to put together this front and back quality standards for temporary traffic control devices, and just kind of pointed out kind of some of the top things that we keep seeing, and hopefully get rid of those problems. And that's been tremendously helpful, something that we share in our pre-activity meetings, and sometimes at the startup meetings for each of the contracts or for the project offices statewide. Another product they'd worked on was the guidebook. Kind of the purpose of that, was to describe all the strategies and the tools that were available there, and kind of make sure everyone knew where the specifications and certain things in the EPG were at that would be helpful to folks. And then also, our last item was collaboration with the districts. Provide a tool there that we could share with the districts and kind of begin our collaboration process. The team went out to each of the districts. I think there may still be a meeting with the Southwest that is upcoming, but shared the guidebook and the presentation with each of the districts, and then took a look at things that each of the districts was doing well. Things really the district personnel thought were excellent at the statewide level and the district level that we could bolster, we could showcase, and then also items they felt they could improve upon or could be improved upon statewide. Some of the things that came out of that, one in particular that we're working on currently is the geospatially stored comments and TMS. One thing that they noted, if we could keep up with these experiences we're having in traffic, on a map, and then create these comments during a meeting kind of at the end of big projects or of critical things, that happen on our projects, and kind of have those for next time we'd scope a project through that area. We could look at, all the comments that were there from the last time. In fact, whenever we got a little deeper into this and started talking with our planning partners, they identified that additional levels, including environmental and even test sections and maintenance elements, would be of benefit here as well. So the project's grown a little bit, but at the end of the day, we hope to have a database here that using TMS, where you can go into a meeting, you can talk about the issues you had, you can note that, and then whoever's working there in the future, if they're looking at that section of road, can easily pull those up or can see them on a map, and what the experiences that you had, such that that's not left, whenever folks retire or we move on to the next project. And with that, I'll turn it back to Ray. I think we'll take questions at the end.
Thank you, Dan. And then me, I'm just going to hand it right back off to Mark Lewis to give a brief update on his efforts leading the Advancing Technology and Roadway Operations TSMO team.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to touch on a few of these that are listed here, like the business process and integration. One of the earliest tasks we worked on was creating a section in the EPG related to TSMO. So if you haven't already seen it, it's section 909. Go out there and take a look at it. There are links to the TSMO plan itself that was created initially, and then also the Safer tool. There's a link there directly to it. And then additionally, there's been some other EPG sections that have TSMO added to them. The project scoping checklist is out there. Preliminary plans have references to TSMO and then work zones. So there's a lot been added lately over the added into the EPG for guidance. And then also the Safer document. I know Alex is going to go over it a little bit more later, but there's a section within it that has recommended considerations when you're looking at projects. And then for, let's see here, the TSMO performance measures. One of the things we did was put together a list of concerns that we needed to focus on within MoDOT. There's 4 areas. The first one was traffic signals and traffic operations infrastructure. And that's related to the aging infrastructure of our traffic signals and also proactively monitoring our signal operations. Another one was situational awareness, and that's really traffic incident management, identifying the time of crashes, accurately reporting the lane closures. Another one was engineering training, and then driver characteristics, looking at distracted and impaired driving. That was presented to the district traffic engineers for consideration. And then we're also working on a consolidated data repository that's going to be able to view, download, analyze, and visualize a lot of traffic data, and that's for analysis purposes. You're looking at crash data, traffic counts, congestion levels. There's some weather information that's coming into it. So we looked at different products, and I think ultimately we're going to narrow it down just to, it's called Titan. It's Transportation Data Integration and Analytics. It's quite the mouthful. But this was a kind of a research project initially, and then we just kind of hopped onto it and are testing it out, adding additional data into it. The first round of testing went out to Southwest District employees and project managers. They went out to planning, went out to maintenance. So they provided that initial feedback of issues that we're seeing with it, just performance issues more than anything at this point. But then the next status is we're going to push it out to the other districts and then across the state. Hopefully, eventually, just get out there and use it, and provide that feedback for us to see how it works and see if there's any enhancements we need to add to it or additional data needs. And then from the education and training standpoint, that's one of the tasks we're working on within our group. Initially, there was a communication plan set up, working with communications department to push out content. The presentation that you're currently looking at was the first real effort with that. We have since converted it to YouTube, and the great Nancy Powell has provided the voiceover for that. So if you haven't seen it yet, go out and look at it. It was sent out via Connections a few weeks ago, and included with that is 13 new TSMO courses within MoDOT U. Those were converted from some webinars that ITS Heartland had put together. So those are resources out there for you to look at, get some training under your belt, get more knowledgeable with TSMO. And then lastly, talk about organization and workforce. This was another one of the efforts we had initially and early on with the team. Currently, we have our 4 groups, work zone, advancing technology, traffic incident management, and CAV groups. They're not dedicated to TSMO, unfortunately. We don't have that dedicated position. We have our other jobs and responsibilities that we have to perform here. And so one of the things we want to do was propose a position, the TSMO engineer position created in each district. So it's been proposed. We have the job specs written and ready to go once we get that position allocated. I know the market adjustment has affected that some, and there's no really FTE allocated yet, but it's out there. We're hoping eventually we'll get to that point where we can get those TSMO positions in place so that we can be dedicated and really have that person as that liaison between the different departments, whether it's planning or design or even here at the TMC with traffic, that we can go to that person, they can coordinate those efforts, they can look into the safer document of what strategies can be performed with this project and just consolidate all that. We really don't know where that position would fall out within each district or department. It could be a traffic position in Southwest. It could be a planning position in Kansas City. We don't know, but it's out there. We're just ready to pull the trigger when we can. And with that, I think I'm done. So thank you, Ray.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the update. And now I'll hand it off to Dave Simmons, who leads our Connected and Automated Vehicle TSMO team.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me today, Ray. I guess the big news today to tell you is MoDOT is not currently developing a connected automated vehicle, but we are working on a plan to be better informed on what the future connected automated vehicle will require as it relates to our infrastructure. Things that are connected automated vehicle, CAV friendly, that play a role in CAV integration. Things like improved striping, improved signing, and maybe even signal upgrades that we need to be aware of. There is technology that CAV can help us improve safety and also improve operations, efficiency and operations on our system today. Maybe it's not in the car itself, but there is technology that is related to infrastructure that can help us with the business that we do today. So we're trying to identify those things and provide those tools to our designers, our program delivery professionals, so they can try to look to implement those when it makes sense. As we look to modernize our infrastructure with the most recent bipartisan infrastructure law resources that have become available, I think it's going to be important for us all to kind of keep an open mind and look for those things that can help us today. Things like the ATSPM. ATSPM stands for Automated Traffic Signal Performance Measures. This is a program that can help us better manage an efficient signal system, but also it's going to help with the eventual integration of connected and automated vehicles. So those types of things that we are already looking to replace signal cameras. This is a treatment that we can do along with our as we modernize our interchanges and corridors. that can benefit us today as well as into the future. So again, I think I want to just double down on what Ray said. You know, the whole intent of this is to improve safety on our roadways and use some of those technologies that are in place today and technologies that we know are coming to help reduce fatal and serious injury crashes on our roadways. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Ray. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. And now I'm ready to do my next handoff to Ben Williams with Federal Highways. He's here to provide some national perspective regarding TSMO and provide some context as to how it can help DOTs in our efforts to operate a safe and efficient transportation system.
Yeah, I think you need to stop sharing your slides before I can take over there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot. Yeah, as Ray said, I'm Ben Williams with the Federal Highway Administration's Resource Center on the operations team. And I'm going to spend a few minutes sort of tying all those loose MoDOT ends together into how this fits into the bigger picture of stuff. So let's get find the right slides to go with that. Here we go. So we always have a federal highway presentation. Nowadays, you have to have a disclaimer that things aren't regulations unless they're marked as regulations in the list of these things. So I'll let you read our legal disclaimers from the lawyers a little later. Start a little bit with Ray gave us a version of what a definition of TSMO is. Share with you one that is in law in the federal regulations from MAP 21. And it's talking about TSMO is a integrated set of strategies that optimize the performance of the system. It could be multi-jurisdictional, multimodal, but it seeks to preserve the existing capacity, improve security, safety, and reliability at a minimum impact to the environment. So what is this TSMO thing? And it's a number of different approaches to basically seek to balance the supply and demand on the system and to manage how both of those things function. A lot of times it involves us trying to implement things more real time and actively involved in the system that we've had with the old projects that we developed in the past. Some examples of big picture examples of some of those kind of strategies are some of these things. Most MoDOT has implemented most all those things. Don't think you've implemented any integrated corridor management yet, but essentially that is tying a number of these things together to serve a purpose in a corridor. A lot of this stuff starts with what are our goals and objectives, both as a state and local areas. Probably recognize these from your long-range plans in the past. That everybody starts with these things, and TSMO efforts support many of those kind of DOT goals. In terms of how it supports the environment, a number of these things are the strategic things to be done with that, especially things like improving economic vitality and making more efficient use of the existing facilities and improving safety is always, every DOT has safety as their #1 goal usually. And in terms of how that impacts human and natural environment, TSMO activities help projects minimize the impact to the environment and improve those things like improving use of non-single occupant vehicle modes in that. Well, accomplishing a lot of other things for the area. So a lot of times we start that with look at the big picture of both in our strategic planning as well as in project development planning. Start for what are our goals, what we're trying to achieve, how can we create objectives to tie those into reality in terms of the local area we're talking about. And for example, some of the things on the right is some of those candidate strategies that you guys have developed a lot of that might relate to those objectives and the goals. So TSMO is a good strategy in that it can help us improve the performance of not only our existing system, but also the ones that we're planning to do in the future. So a lot of times we're important to embrace the mindset of TSMO activities when we're trying new things, either to enhance new facilities or minimize the impacts of us developing new facilities. So some of these opportunities for tying both of those things together, a lot of times we talk about projects as in 20-year time horizon, but a lot of times TSMO efforts are opportunities for us to implement things in a shorter time period, up to 3 to 5 years, and maybe deal with some of the changes in that during that time period. And also it helps us expand the range of options that are available as part of projects by including some of those types of strategies into what we're doing. So, as I said, the planning can connect to TSMO activities, both in terms of building those into both longer term and shorter term kinds of projects that we have in development at different places. In terms of some of the things that we routinely do in the states that are opportunities for connections between transportation systems and management operations, and well as the regular decision-making process. Some of those data collection processes, long-range planning, strategic planning and performance measures, the TMAs doing their congestion management process are an opportunity to tie both of those things together, as well as looking at scenario planning and developing concepts of operations for different kinds of projects. So from the point of environmental impacts, there are a lot of things that can be a benefit to this. Looking at impacts of roadway capacity loss during projects, as well as looking at the big picture effect of climate change and weather events. And certainly Missouri gets your share of those kind of things, and improving our situational awareness and building in new kinds of technologies, as was mentioned a few minutes ago. So in terms of, we mentioned climate change being a big discussion right now. Some of these kind of strategies aid in both mitigating some of those climate change impacts, as well as building in resiliency so that our projects last longer and accommodate more of the public's traveling needs. So we tend to think of, some of us tend to think of TSMO in terms of the old model of just a bunch of ITS projects we've tied together, but it involves, as Ray mentioned earlier, the entire department, and including such strategies as demand management that we really haven't thought of that much in the past as part of this. It includes more active managing of the transportation system. It helps us also accommodate more sustainable modes of travel, like bicycle and pedestrian movements that are a part of our system. So it help us meet some of those goals. So in terms of project development, there's a place for this both in long-term and short-term planning, in development of scenario planning that many states use to prepare for what kinds of strategies they're going to address in the future. And there's even some of this that fits into things like FHWA's INVEST tool that's a number of states use for looking at sustainability issues. Okay, so I already mentioned a little bit, quite a bit about environmental process. All this helps being a part of that environmental process and the scoping of different kinds of projects. Well, I wanted to share some examples from other places in the country of those kind of things. Ohio has something that they refer to as the Traffic Operations Assessment Tool, TOAST. It's a tool that was featured under by the National Center of Operations Excellence. It's on their website as a great example. It's it's a spreadsheet-based tool that rates their networks based on bottlenecks, travel time, performance, safety, volume per lane, freight corridors, incident clearance, and secondary crashes. So essentially what they're doing is taking their whole system and saying, which are the most likely places that we want to consider TSMO strategies when we're developing future projects. The link you'll find in this, when this is posted, will take you to the both the TOAST tool and this case study that's posted nationally. Ohio has set aside, they're kind of unique in that they've set aside $5 million of budget money just for people considering TSMO projects in other kinds of long-range planning efforts. The example of here's the big picture screen of where those ratings are. As you might expect, the major cities in Ohio show up with the colors as more of those sites that are places that are could use TSMO kind of activities in them. An example of Washington State. Now, Washington State trying to address the same problem from a different way of trying to decide which kind of where in the state to actually implement TSMO kind of activities. They went and looked at 300 corridors around the state and rated them for how where their congestion challenges are and whether TSMO kind of strategies fit in with those. And for the projects developed within those locations, they go back to that list of strategies for them to evaluate them. Pennsylvania did things a slightly different way. They developed this guidebook. Essentially, they're looking at stages in project development and are looking at how TSMO fits into each of those stages. In this case, you're looking at the guidebook that refers to transportation planning. So they broke the project development cycle down into stages of that project development, phases of the project development. All right, now I got an example from Florida. This is something developed by District 4. That's Fort Lauderdale, part of the east coast of Florida. That district already has a TSMO master plan for their district that takes into account strategies that they want to implement on traffic management, transit management, safety, things like incident management and emergency management as part of that. So this checklist is part of their scoping project process for regular projects, which they have people fill out and refer back to whether those things apply to that area. And so it reminds folks to go ahead and look a little more at some of those kind of strategies. Here's an example of a project they had on Southwest 10th Street in Fort Lauderdale. Naturally, because this is Florida, we have to have everything as blue and coral because that's kind of colors for South Florida. But the left, right street here, east, west street on here is 10th Street. So 10th Street has a lot of traffic because it connects several important things. It connects I-95 corridor to the Florida Turnpike and to the end of the Sawgrass Freeway, which here starts out east-west and then turns south and runs down toward Miami. So because it connects 3 freeways, it collects a lot of traffic. So for the blue box here, they were looking at a number of strategies for smart work zones and other ways to mitigate some of the traffic impacts when they do some work on the 10th Street. All right, briefly wanted to mention where we are with some resources. We have a lot of resources on the organizing and planning for operations web pages that Federal Highway maintains. And I just wanted to point out that 2 of those is a place to get started, and then you can wander through and see a lot of other things. This site is the connection of how does planning and operations relate to each other in terms of a lot of different kinds of strategies for operations, whether it's designing for operations, performance-based planning, livability, traffic signal management, incident management or reliability. They all have more detailed information on this website. And the other version of a general site I'd point you to start with is this one on communicating with our programs. It's not only us programs, it's connecting to our partners in programs. And then it looks at how does TSMO connect to all these activities down here in the blue: asset management, construction design, environment, performance management, safety, and information technology. Some of the same things that you pointed out are important issues for MoDOT to follow up on. All right, thank you for the information. There's my contact information if you guys want to ask me some questions later on. But for right now, I will kick it back to, I guess, to Alex to take us to the next segment. You probably want me to kick off my slides, don't you, Alex?
Yep. I think I can kick you out, but I'd prefer you.
You're gone.
Down.
I'm gone.
Yeah. All right. Should be looking good now. Ben, thanks again for giving that overview from kind of the federal level and sharing some practices from other states. I will be more focused on things that are going on at MoDOT, and specifically I focused on some that I thought would be most useful for people in the project delivery realm. So our goal has been said, I think, a couple times already, but it's to kind of mainstream TSMO by incorporating it into existing processes and policies. Because of that, you may have already encountered some of this guidance already, but I'm sure that this overview will be beneficial anyway as you consider TSMO on some of your projects. So first up, there we go. I would like to say that point out up there, I'm going to have a title of what we're talking about on the slide, but then also underneath it is the EPG section where you can find it. So if you kind of forget about where it is and need to come back and look at the slides later, or if you want to look for more information, you'll be able to do that. The first thing is SAFER that Ray introduced earlier, and that stands for Safety Assessment for Every Roadway. Basically, what we're trying to do here is, you know, as MoDOT works towards 0 roadway fatalities in the state, um, we're putting some things in place to help us reach that goal, and the Safer document's one of them. It's created to facilitate a discussion of safety improvements for all projects during core team meetings. And so when you flip through, um, you'll have different sections, and this is just a poorly blown up screenshot of the section that includes TSMO. But as you can see by looking at this, we have some things on here that are kind of things that we always would check. You know, we'd always look at signal items, but we may not look at maybe if we could implement ATSPM, the automated traffic signal performance measures, or preemption for emergency vehicles or things like that. And then we also have some other stuff listed like smart work zone strategies, and if the shoulder is wide enough for emergency response, if we're talking about a roadway where our emergency response operates. So next up in section 104.6, we have the TSMO checklist along with some of the other project scoping checklists. And the point of this one is to consider how the roadway and system will operate during construction primarily. There's also a reminder on there to the team that they need to plan for the maintenance or replacement of ITS devices and other TSMO strategic elements as you go through. In addition, in section 104.7, you have the project scoping form. This one, most of you are probably familiar with if you have anything to do with setting up projects. Just wanted to point out that there is an ITS section included in the project scoping form. It wasn't always there, but it is now, has been for, I think, a couple, 3 more, maybe more years. ITS devices are included now in district asset management plans, and so they should be replaced at the end of their life cycles in STIP projects. Traditionally, a lot of it has been kind of done through operations budgets, which are not really capable of covering the cost of some of these items by themselves in most districts. So the operations budgets should mainly be for repairing and replacing devices that need replacement for whatever reason before the end of their life. So like they have a software malfunction, or they get damaged from a vehicle striking them, or lightning strike, or anything like that. Next up, and Dan kind of already introduced this one a little bit, but it's the work zone impact analysis spreadsheet. And again, this one's been around for a while, and you might have noticed, but we did update it to add a couple new things in here. We have the advanced work zone strategies and the contract time acceleration strategies. This spreadsheet was developed by my division, Highway Safety and Traffic, along with the University of Missouri-Columbia. And it lets you either input volumes directly from TMS, or not directly, but the spreadsheet downloaded from TMS, or you can enter manually if you've done counts out there. Instructions are available in the EPG section, that's 61613 shown in the title. And yeah, we just wanted to point out that in February we did add this new content. So what it looks like, basically the spreadsheet makes recommendations and ranks the items which should be considered, or are strongly recommended, or not recommended, or not applicable at all, based on the roadway characteristics that you have to enter, like number of lanes and curves and cross streets and things like that, and then some traffic volumes. It also provides the estimated cost to help budget for work zone strategies all the way back in the planning and estimating stages. So you can kind of put a placeholder number in there until you try to tweak it for your project. And also, one of the best ways to minimize construction impacts is to just minimize the amount of time that the contractors are on the roadway. So in addition to one of the options in the advanced strategies being road closure, there's also these contract time acceleration strategies that can help reduce the duration of construction. So rather than telling you exactly what to do, the spreadsheet just kind of provides some recommendations for the project team to consider. You notice it says should be considered, strongly recommended. There's no kind of shall on this. It's really up to the team to get together and kind of consider these things and figure out which would be the best, if any, for their particular roadway, their particular project, and their situation. So continuing with stuff that Dan hit upon a little bit, we have the work zone management guidebook. And basically, in order to be able to apply those work zone strategies that are suggested in the spreadsheet, we thought it might be a good idea to have a guidebook that goes into a little bit more detail about each of them. And this also kind of looks similar to some of the stuff that Ben showed from some other states. Part of the reason that it may look like some stuff from other states is because the diagram section was liberally borrowed from our good friends to the north in Minnesota DOT. They were happy to share the work they had already done, and it saved us a little bit of effort of trying to do things again twice. So basically, for each strategy, we have 2 pages. First one gives a description of what the thing is and how it can be used, as well as some potential applications, the benefits and costs, and some links to additional references if you want to learn more. And then that second page shows the typical layout for potential uses. And again, thanks Minnesota. Appreciate that. We did give them a little note at the bottom that says it's from Minnesota DOT. So it's not stealing, it's just borrowing. So this EPG 909 section that this is in is a new section. It's still kind of a work in progress, but that TSMO section, you can also find links to MoDOT Strategic Traffic Incident Management Plan. And I think Owen Hassan will be talking about that at your meeting coming up next month, I believe. And we also have our TSMO plan in there, and then links to a few sections around the EPG where we relatively recently introduced some new items. We do have one more section that I wanted to highlight. It's just 910, and this one is not new. It's been there a while, but it's where you can find some up-to-date information on some ITS devices and procedures. The DMS and CCTV sections give some guidelines about where to locate and things like that that help in the design and planning stages. The ITS architecture kind of lays out a framework of where we can put things, what types of strategies we're looking to do, in which locations, things like that. It's extremely long, and probably most of you won't have much to do with it at any point. But it also does lay out some of the requirements that Federal Highways has upon any project that includes ITS. And then for anybody who has to try and buy any ITS devices, we have 910.5 is for procurement. And one more great resource, people that can help you figure things out. I might be a bit biased since my name's on the list, along with basically all the members of my work unit, and then that group of people at the bottom who volunteered a lot of time and effort on top of the regular duties to help us implement and spread the word about TSMO throughout MoDOT. I want to thank them again, and those that presented today as well. Really, just can't say thank you enough to all of them. So my division, we can kind of help you answer questions within our areas of expertise, and I put them on there. The team leads are there to take any ideas that you have around the use of TSMO or any kind of suggestions about how to tweak or improve items developed by their teams. And if you're not sure who to ask, you can always talk to me or Ray. I will go ahead and volunteer him as well, and we will point you in the right direction. So that's all that I wanted to present. And I think we're ready to move back to questions, maybe.
Hey,
All right.
move on to questions. I do want to throw a plug out there. If anybody wants to join one of the teams, reach out to us. And I know we're short of a couple of members on my team. So yeah, send me your name, and we'll put you under consideration for adding to the team.
All
Oh, I
right.
didn't know I was supposed to do a recruiting slide. I could have done that.
Let's have a request form for volunteers, right? Great job, all presenters. I really appreciate the information that was provided. So at this time, like Alex said, we are going to take questions. You can ask a question in the chat, or if you want to verbally ask a question, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question.
See
So
one there about sharing the slides. Ben, are we allowed to share yours as long as the disclaimer's on there in like PDF form?
Yeah. You should have a copy of that, so you can share that part of this effort. It's been
Sounds good.
approved.
All right. I have no problem sharing my stuff, but I don't want to necessarily volunteer away FHWAs without asking first.
I have a question. Thanks for the presentation. Ben, I wonder from a federal highway perspective, if you could maybe talk about those different states, kind of their prioritization methodologies, and maybe talk about maybe some of the lessons they've learned along the way, or how you might rank those, or what you think we should implement first.
In terms of, well, all the states have essentially had their own version of trying to figure out how TSMO fits into other kinds of activities that they have. So they all implement TSMO strategies on their own or with their partners, like the cities. But beyond that, trying to implement that in other projects is something that they've all figured out little different approaches to trying to do that. As a couple I mentioned are essentially efforts of folks trying to figure out how to take what they're used to producing in terms of capacity building projects and improve or smooth out the way for TSMO activities to be rolled into those. I'm not sure. I don't want to say any one of those is the right approach. There's a lot of other people who are, haven't gone this way of doing things, but they're all looking for how they could incorporate that. I know Wisconsin was one of those states. I didn't have a slide on them, but they essentially a while back did one of those things of looking at all their interstate corridors around the state and trying to figure out which ones were the most sections of the interstate were most important in terms of implementing TSMO kinds of or ITS strategies. So naturally, like the places around Milwaukee tend to show up hot in all that list. So a lot of the states are essentially doing one version or another of what MoDOT is trying to figure out right now is how to better incorporate those into your regular planning process for project development. So these things get included both in terms of the environmental process of evaluating those and as part of mitigation for some of the impacts of implementing projects like that. So if you were looking for the one miracle state DOT, we haven't found one yet. It's all work in progress.
There are some that are maybe more that work similarly to how MoDOT has their things funded. Like the first example that Ben gave was from Ohio DOT, and they have a set aside pot of money that people compete for, and then whatever project is submitted is graded using that toast tool, things like that. So and that's how they identify where they should put projects. So that one isn't maybe quite as relevant to what we're doing with the Washington, not Wisconsin, DOT. they really are kind of focused on the integrated corridor management a lot. And so the way they analyze things was kind of that corridor by corridor basis. So that could be an approach that we'd use. And then I think maybe the Pennsylvania and Florida ones are probably some combination of those closer to what we might be looking at, where you would basically have to have an existing plan laid out with some locations and corridors and things analyzed. And then as you're going through the project process, you'd go back and check it against the plan that already exists. And so that could be a method that we could use at MoDOT.
And for something like integrated corridor management, they tend to be places where we have lots of traffic in larger cities. But it's not involved with, something that the project development people would be developing on their own. It would probably be something you developed interactively with the local cities involved, because a lot of times there's different things that they're going to be implemented as part of that is not necessarily something that would be in a project from MoDOT.
Yeah, and ICM frequently includes managed lanes, which MoDOT has some history of doing, but not very extensive. It's been
and some places it's public transit too. How do we help traveler information so people to consider whether they want to drive all the way through some very congested conditions, or do they want to get off and get on the light rail in St. Louis or something for part of their journey? Those kind of considerations. So I have a variety of partners, and a lot of times involve developing agreements and toward how they're going to work together toward implementing certain strategies in either a certain part of town or a certain quarter, as Alex mentioned.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of talking about we would need more of an overall plan in place first, because you can't just in the scoping portion of a project that's coming up soon say, hey, we're gonna put hard shoulders for buses on the on a freeway or something. That takes a lot more kind of advanced planning to do.
So some of these kind of strategies are a region with the MoDOT might get together and say, these are important strategies that are longer term strategies for us to implement, and trying to work on the pieces of who's going to fund it, how is it going to fit together, all before you would ever get to scoping out a specific project that might include pieces of it. So not all TSMO projects are the thing we implement in 6 months or in real time, like the incident management guys are trying to do things in real time. But as I said, the states are doing things like Georgia's big one on, they're trying to build a system of high occupancy toll lanes in the area. Well, those are definitely things that are going to be implemented over a long term. They're number of years are working on developing that. So I have to figure out how all that connects to other kinds of TSMO strategies and to the facilities that they're going to be developing for those.
Brian, do you know if they're in the Kansas City region, is there some kind of maybe subcommittee at MARC, the MPO there, that would maybe be looking at some of these region-wide things?
I'm probably not the best person to ask about that, but some of those topics are definitely mentioned from time to time. Like you're saying, maybe it's a struggle because it's more at the project level, but yeah, I think those are definitely things they're talking about.
Yeah, I'd say most of the things that I presented can be implemented at the project level without any advanced planning. But some of these bigger ones that, especially that Ben hit upon, or more of work with partners and regions, things like that too.
And I think with some of the large corridors that we have coming up in our STIP, there's a lot of opportunities to evaluate how TSMO could fit into some of those projects.
I-70 corridor team, right?
Yep.
And then Kenny did ask another question about Titan and the implementation of it. Mark, did you want to give a quick update of where we at, or you want me to?
I was hoping Brittany would hop on here. I don't know if she's part of this or not, but she's the
I'm
one leading.
here.
Okay, you want to?
I'm here.
Just
I just
go
wasn't
with the
watching my
so far?
team's chat.
Yeah, you want to go over what's been the process so far of it?
Yeah, so we've rolled it out to basically a test group here just in the Southwest District. We've got a couple, I'd say, comments and concerns that we've submitted back to MU on different issues that we're having and different things that we'd like addressed before we kind of roll it out to everybody. But I don't quite have a time frame on that yet because I haven't heard back from anybody at MU yet on the status of those comments. So when we get some of those addressed, then we'll kind of roll it out to everybody. But like I said, I don't really have much of a time frame yet.
So Brittany, can you kind of explain just on a high level what we're trying to get accomplished with Titan?
Yeah, so basically we just want a resource that we can go and store like a lot more data than what we have like available in our current other methods. It has things like the video streams, traffic counts, incident clearance, big long list of other things that we're getting included in it as well. But the main purpose is just so that way we have somewhere that we can store the vast amount of data that we're getting as technology keeps advancing and we keep getting more data available to us. That way we have it in a format where we can also use it to make, engineering decisions and be able to have it all in one place.
Yeah, and that's kind of the important part too, is the ability to use it. So, we have access to a lot of the stuff that's going in there already, but some of it is in the region-specific ATMS programs that the TMCs use. We have some of it in our TMS. We have some of it in third-party video streaming applications. Basically, we want to get everything that we can in one place and then be able to do analysis on that as well. So besides just accessing it, you can do a search for just some raw data if you want to download it and dump it and mess around in spreadsheets like we're used to doing. But also there's some visualization tools and a whole bunch of different abilities to do queries where you can combine different sets of data that maybe were not as easy to combine in the past.
And also just because we say we haven't rolled it out to everybody yet. It is still available though online. I mean, anyone from MoDOT can access it. It's just not something that we've, I guess, like really thrown out and promoted a lot yet because we were working through some kinks first. But it is accessible though for what we've got so far. It is still developing though too, like Alex said. So I mean, more information is going to be added to it and more data, but it is available for what it currently is. That version is available. So.
If you want to test it out, let us know. We can send you the instructions on how to get to it in the manual. You can be kind of our next test group as well.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any more questions in the chat pod right now. So yeah, and if anybody wants to ask a verbal question, feel free to unmute. looks like we have a volunteer in the chat that wants to test. So good we had that conversation. So thanks for offering, Ben.
What a great question, Kenny. Thanks for teeing us up.
Yeah, I will make sure I get any of those names written down of anyone who says that in the chat. That way I can make sure you guys get that information sent to you.
All right, looks like we don't have any more questions. So
Well,
I'm gonna
I'll
go-
ask a question of Alex and Ray.
Well, I think that Alex was sharing some of the tools that he has at his disposal, or that we have at MoDOT, to try to help encourage some of these conversations with regards to potential TSMO strategies that we can try to incorporate earlier in the project development process, as well as not just necessarily new infrastructure, but also an ability to maintain some of our existing infrastructure that's out there. And having these conversations using tools like the Safer document, where we identify TSMO strategies, and being able to utilize that to get these conversations started earlier, are just going to help us with our future deployments as it relates to our program delivery efforts.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, I think these kind of opportunities where we're bringing in other groups that maybe aren't as familiar with these tools helps them become more educated when they're in a core team meeting or in the planning phases of a project, that they can ask the types of questions that were presented today and see if there's opportunities to, implement TSMO across the way. And certainly we want to continue to encourage that for all of our project delivery staff. We support that. And obviously we've got a huge team of people across the state that have contributed to this. So there's lots of context that can help guide everyone through that process. So, but it's evolving, obviously. We're evolving as the technologies continue to evolve.
Yeah, I'll just add that, we continue to do things like this to work on awareness. And that's definitely one of the pieces of the puzzle that we've been focusing on, especially in Mark Lewis's team. But now that we've started to do all these things, we got to make sure people know that they're available for use and how to use them. We're also, I guess, trying to continually add tools to the toolbox, so to speak, where as we go through, we're picking out all these best practices from other places. We're testing things out and on particular projects or corridors or whatever, and then the stuff that works, we can continue to add instructions and add different layouts for work zones or whatever, and share that information as it comes up.
Great question, Ben.
Almost like you've done this before.
Yeah. All right, as we wrap this webinar up, we will be registering you on MoDOT for those that are on the call. But if you're in a group or you called in today, please reach out to Patricia Barnes, and she will make sure you get logged into MoDOT and get credit for this training today. This concludes our webinar, and thank you, presenters, and for everybody that participated today. Have a great day.
Thanks again, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.